Hello. So I I I love the hidden opponent and I love the work that they're doing. And so when I saw your story, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to talk to her. So I'm so happy that you're here today.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. I'm super excited.
So do you have any questions for me before we get started?
Honestly, no, I should be good.
Okay, awesome. So let's just start from the very beginning. How did you get into soccer? Have you always been a defender or have they kind of moved you around? I mean, how did you end up at Iowa?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I've played soccer my entire life, as probably most soccer players have. The joke going around my family is I was way too competitive as a child, and they needed me to channel that into something that was good for me. No one in my family has ever been an athlete before, and so it was just kind of something that fit right for me. So I grew up playing soccer, a bunch of other sports as well here and there, but soccer was always the one that stuck for me. I have actually been a defender my whole life. A lot of that was because of that innate competitiveness. I'm really gritty, aggressive. I like to compete, and so defender's always been like a good role for me, which has been really awesome. And yeah, so growing up playing soccer, luckily, like my dream was always to play Division 1, as most people's are, and I wanted to play in a big conference. That was the goal. Both my parents went to Big Ten institutions, so for me, I wanted to see if I could do that as well at a high level. Soccer recruiting happens really early, and there's been some rules now that have delayed it a bit. But for when I was doing it, I was going on college visits my freshman year of high school, trying to figure out where I would want to go, what I want to navigate. And I guess about halfway through, I realized like these big institutions that I had dreamed of going at for so long were actually looking at me as well. And I was good enough to actually do it, which was really exciting, obviously. So yeah, going through the process, I looked at a bunch of different schools, and Iowa just always fit right for me. I fell in love with the coaching staff here. It's the right distance away from home. I love the community. I love the campus. And yeah, so then I ended up coming to Iowa, and it was really great, and been here ever since.
So where else were you looking at playing?
Yeah, I was especially looking in the Midwest. I knew that's especially where I wanted to be. And so I had other offers, and I had reached out to Wisconsin, Purdue, and then being from Missouri, the zoo and a couple down south schools such as Vanderbilt, and a couple schools on the West Coast such as Pepperdine and UC San Diego.
Yeah, so that was high level soccer that you were looking at. That's
Yeah, for
awesome.
sure.
So
Thanks.
what was it about Iowa that stuck out to you? I mean, you're not very far from home, but was there anything about being on campus or the coaching staff that really drew you to Iowa specifically?
Absolutely, and that's definitely the reason why I'm here is I love our coaching staff. One thing I really like is that out of our coaching staff, we have 3 males and 1 female, and all the guys are dads. And I think that really resonates with us as student athletes because like they treat us as a second family. We're not just their players, we're their family. And I really feel that. I feel like I could go cry in my coach's office about my boyfriend and I breaking up, and he would be there to hand me a box of tissues. It's not just a professional relationship, it's a personal one as well, which really stood out to me. Another thing I really just noticed about Iowa was when I was in a lot of the recruiting talks. I'm a left-footed player, which is a bit of a rarity in soccer, and a lot of coaches would be like, "Yeah, you have such a great left foot. You have a really good cross." But at Iowa, it was more of you're a leader. You have a good personality. Like we think you'd fit in our program. So it's a bit more personalized instead of just seeing me as a left foot. They saw me as a human, and that really just drew me to it was a place where I knew I would be valued and where I'd belong.
Wow. So at what age were you when you said, I'm going to go here?
I was 15, and so my joke is I decided where I was going to college before I could drive a car.
That's crazy. I mean, when you were, I mean, I was a soccer player as well. I was a goalie.
Mhm.
And I just remember I played club as well. And all of my teammates were going to D1 schools and they were getting recruited from showcases that we were doing at like 15 and 16. So like I understand the process, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, so on the club team, were a lot of your other teammates getting recruited to D1 schools as well?
Yeah, I think majority of my team did go D1, which is really exciting. I was one of the first ones to commit, which I remember was nerve-wracking for me. And also like another weird thing is like it's not talked about. Like other girls on your club teams don't talk about where you're looking, what like because like it's like you don't want to show like, oh, I'm showman, I'm looking here and you're not, or different things like that. And so it was like never discussed. So I remember that process was definitely hard to navigate because I felt like no one actually understood that what I was going through, and the people that did, I was taught not to talk about it. And so like I'd go to high school and I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm going on a college visit, and they're like, we're sophomores, what do you mean? And so like no one really understood like what the process was like.
Was there anyone that was helping you with that recruiting process?
Yeah, my club coach was definitely a good contact. It was a bit like, I mean, but at the same time, he was also navigating 30 girls doing it at the same time. And so a lot of it was kind of trial and error with my parents. My parents were great supports and, you know, helping me write out pro con lists, helping me navigate phone calls, how I should act around college coaches, stuff like that. But a lot of it was just kind of thrown onto my family. And as being from a family that didn't have any athletes before, we didn't really know what we were doing, but we just did a lot of trial and error.
So then you get to Iowa and you start having these anxiety issues. When did they start? And let's just start. When did you first feel them coming on?
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely something that's always been there, just in the fact of like how I was raised in my family. So it's not like it was just thrown on me when I got to Iowa. I come from an extremely competitive family, area that like, you know, like as soon as I got an award, my mom and I joke about this now, but she was like, I never wanted you to get complacent. And so when I'd get an award, she'd be like, oh, but you need to work harder. And that kind of like programmed my brain in a way of being like, well, I'm not good enough, like I need to keep working. And I think made me the soccer player I became, because I don't believe in complacency at this point. Like there's always a higher goal, but I also never really celebrated what I was at. I always was immediately searching for that next level. So when I got to Iowa, for me the goal was like, I am going to start as a freshman. That was the goal. And in order to do that, I actually graduated high school semester early. So got to Iowa in January of 2019. And immediately I found myself in a spot where I was thrown into the starting lineup, which was unreal, and like just felt like so much was paying off. But for me, instead of taking like a step back and celebrating that moment, I like that's where the pressure really started seeping in. And first time being away from home, being 4 hours away from mom and dad, like navigating a college campus, doing college classes when all my friends are doing their senior year of high school, kind of joking off in their last semester. Like all that kind of started to build inside me. And that first semester was definitely one of the first times I like actually felt myself like not being able to rise to the occasion.
So did you ever feel like that was externally motivated, or did you feel as though what you were feeling for yourself was motivated at its core by other people?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's honestly something I've been trying to navigate now. What I kind of realized is through my life growing up, like I loved competing. I didn't necessarily love soccer. And so I loved getting there and I loved being able to see myself work hard and get better through that. And I liked the external recognition I got from the hard work. And it became when I was older in high school that I actually started falling in love with the sport of soccer and not just the rewards I could get from soccer. And so going into my freshman year of college, I found myself still looking for that external recognition of like my coach coming up to me and saying, hey, like you played great today. Or my mom texting me after the game being like, wow, like you did really well. Instead of myself being like, man, like I crushed that. And like playing for myself and my joy instead of looking for that recognition. And so once I got to college, that doesn't happen anymore. Like all of a sudden, you know, your coach come up to you after like it has to be a seriously good game to get that recognition. Because I mean, there's different athletes in the level and the caliber is so much higher. And so for me, like that's when I started realizing I'm like, I'm playing for not the right reasons. Like I'm playing because I guess I'm good at this and I enjoy being good at something, not because I'm actually enjoying what I'm doing. And I really had a moment, I'm like, do I enjoy what I'm doing? And I like thought about it for a really long time. And like, I love soccer. I love competing. I love fighting, but I didn't use it for the right reasons at the time. And so like after that point, it kind of took a mental switch in my head of I'm playing for me and I'm playing to have fun for myself. And I don't care what anyone says to me after a game, because in my gut, I know if I did good and I did bad and what I need to do to improve. And so I definitely switched from an extrinsic motivation to an intrinsic motivation.
So do you think that if you had superimposed your skill on a different sport, you would have been as good?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The joke around the team and my whole college team could into this. I'm actually one of the most unathletic, uncoordinated people I've ever been around. I can't do a somersault. Like I die doing cartwheels. My limbs are just so awkwardly long. But for some reason I can play soccer. And I think that's just because my whole life I was like, huh, this is a sport. This is how I'm going to commit my time. And so I genuinely do believe like I could be an elite athlete because at birth I'm not. And so like at any sport, whatever I would have could have been in my time to, I could have succeeded at.
And then as much as that is a physical skill, that is a mental skill as well. So
Completely.
I mean, how did you train yourself mentally to keep pushing?
Yeah, and so a lot of that once again came from that extrinsic motivation I had growing up. For me, my first really challenge actually came in the form of running track, and so I love soccer, but in order to stay in shape over the summer, I started running track. This was when I was a sixth grader. I started doing this, and naturally, all of a sudden, I like was really good because I played soccer my whole life. I know how to run. It really wasn't that hard. It's running in circles, and I know how to run, and I became really good at it. To the point where sixth and seventh grade, I was competing at a national level. I think I placed second in the nation in the 1500 run my like seventh grade year. Like I was a very good runner, but that was the first time I really faced pressure because when track, it's just you. There's no teammate that you could say, oh, they gave me the bad ball, so that's why I messed up. There's no other, I mess up, but there's a goalie behind me who's going to save my butt. And so it's track, it's you versus the clock. And that was the first time I really was like, this is myself, like this is my pressure. And so as I kept succeeding through the ranks in Missouri and during track, like it was more and more pressure of like, I can't be beat. Like I've never been beat in the state of Missouri, so I have to keep going. And that's when I kind of realized, like I have to keep pushing. And I will never forget it. It was going into my freshman year of high school. That track season, I sucked. I was getting beat in Missouri for the first time. My times were way off, and I realized like I didn't put any effort in off training. Like I would say I was going for a run, but I was really running out of my neighborhood and then just walking because I just didn't enjoy it and I didn't love doing it. And all of a sudden I realized, wow, like as much as it's so cheesy and so cliche, like when you work hard, you get results. And I didn't work hard, so I didn't deserve results. And I think learning that lesson so young was so critical to me because I learned, I'm like, if this is a goal, like if playing D1 college soccer was a goal, I needed to work hard to get the results. And so being able to see my own failure when I knew I didn't work hard only helped me motivate myself to say like, okay, like I actually need to put time into this and this is how I'm going to succeed. And that's when I fully started committing myself to soccer and everything I was going to do to succeed.
So then how old were you? I mean, how much of a presence on the Iowa soccer team were you before you started dealing with anxiety off the field?
I was probably only halfway through my first semester when I first started feeling it. And then the times where the like anxiety really started overcoming me was my first fall Big Ten season. So I had gotten through my first semester of college. I'd played 10 exhibition games with the team, but they didn't really count for anything. We had a very good team that year. But it didn't really count. So I was like, okay, like, yeah, I'm a freshman playing, but like everyone's playing because they're exhibition games. So who knows? And then I remember that fall, so my technical first freshman fall, I found my name on the starting lineup again. And I remember I had a sit down meeting with my coach during preseason because my coach could tell I was second guessing things. And he pulled me aside and he was like, why do you think you're our starting left back? And I was like, I got lucky and fell in the right shoes. And he's like, no, like Sam, like you're good enough. Like you're our best left back. And he's like, stop second guessing yourself and stop playing this game where you think you're not. Like you need to understand that you are good. And that's why we're choosing you. And it's not because of some luck or something. And like that was my first wake up call that other people could see the second doubt like that I had going on in my head. Cause that was something I had been second doubting the whole like fall.
So when your coach came up to you, what do you think it was that triggered other people recognizing this in you?
Yeah, I've always been told I'm someone that wears my emotions on my sleeves, and you can see exactly what I'm seeing on my face. So I think as much as I thought I was playing off this cool, confident, no one knows, like I'm the chillest person in the room. Like I think everyone could see I was panicking on the inside. And then another thing is just with soccer, you can tend to see anxiety and stuff like that come up in play. So whether you're confident, I'm like, I'm gonna drive this girl 1v1, I'm gonna beat her, or I'm gonna take 3 touches and then look up and not find any options and get flustered and lose the ball. And so I found myself like overthinking decisions in the field, like, which is like, I've been a left back since I was 6 years old. Like, I know how to play left back. And when I got to the college level, I had been at college for a semester. Like, they knew what my caliber was. So all of a sudden in the fall, I reverted back. And so I think that's what really showed people that like, okay, something's going on that's more than just her body. It's like something's in her head. And that's like when it really came out to people was like, hey, like, are you okay? Because like you're not yourself.
So how do you think you would have worked through it had someone not confronted you about what they saw you going through?
Yeah,
I mean,
honestly,
do you think that you would have found it within yourself to deal with that?
I think I would have eventually. However, I think I would have kept playing off like I'm so chill, I'm so confident. The metaphor that a lot of my teammates have jokingly used about me before is I'm a creme brulee because I'm super hard on the outside, but when you get to know me, I'm a big softie. But I like kind of like I built up this hard exterior of like, oh my gosh, like I'm tough. Like I used to pride myself on the fact that I had no emotion. Like I have no emotion. I'm super confident. I'm super chill. And once people were like, no, you're not, like, stop lying to yourself. Like, we can all see through you. It made me realize that I could open up and to be a little bit more vulnerable about those soft spots and start to work through those, which was super great to have teammates. But I think if I didn't have a coach or teammates reach out to me, like, I think I just would have kept building up this hard exterior until it would have like bottled up to a breaking point.
So what were your teammates doing during the point that your coach came up to you? I mean, did you have teammates also talking to you about them seeing that in you, or was it mostly just your coaching staff?
It was a lot of my coaching staff because I was in a weird spot of I had graduated early, like I said, and there was only one other girl who had done that. But we were in very different positions on the team. Like at this point, I was the one freshman who was starting, who was in consideration to get a lot of minutes, whereas most other freshmen weren't. On top of that, they're all trying to figure out college for the first time, which is when I like had already done there. But I didn't really have close enough relationships with like the upperclassmen on the team. They didn't know me well enough to know like what my normal is. And so like my closest friends were going through something that was completely different than me. And I wasn't close enough to other people for them to even notice. And so a lot of it did come down to my coaching staff, but a couple of my friends could tell like I was building up the pressure. And though they couldn't necessarily relate, like there was a lot of late nights in the dorm rooms where I was just like, I'm not good enough to be here. And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, you need to stop thinking like that because that's only reflecting in your play.
So why do you think that you went to that extreme? I mean, you were here, you're on scholarship, like the coaches obviously believe in you, but why did you not believe in yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. And a lot of it I feel like goes back to my youth. So, like as you said, you've played soccer, you've kind of been through that club dynamic. I grew up in a no-name club, middle of suburban Missouri, like nothing fancy that was going to get me recruited for a college. So in seventh grade, I made the leap to go from that small town to the biggest club in the state of Missouri that I knew could get me that D1 offer. And when I made that leap, all of a sudden I'm going against girls who are more technical, faster, stronger, because they've played at this level that I haven't played at. And immediately I found myself being like, I need to work so much harder to get to where they're at. Even though in seventh grade, when I switched this team, I was on the starting lineup for that team. So it wasn't like I was like underperforming, but in my head, I was like, I didn't come from the same background that they did. So I spent my whole time on that club team, like fighting and finding myself feeling the need to like always prove I'm better because I don't come from the same rich background that these girls come from. I don't come from the same fancy club team with the fancy coaches that these girls come from. And I feel like that gave like the one thing that really gave me was my edge in my competitiveness. Like I'm going to be grittier. I'm going to grab you. I'm going to foul you because I might not be as good on the ball, but I can push you down. And that kind of gave me my identity as a soccer player. And that's ultimately what Iowa and other coaches recruited me for, was because they saw that I'm this girl who was not afraid to shove anyone down. And that became my identity on the field. And so I kind of rolled with that. And like, that was the empowering thing to me, was like, yeah, I might not be as technical, as good of a player, but I'm going to shove you down. And so when I came to Iowa, I like, once again, I'm like, well, now I'm 3 steps back. Like it's like seventh grade all over again. So I'm like, I need to find my edge. And that once again came in the aggressive fouls, the going in hard, and not the actual learning how to play soccer. And it took me until honestly now, like this summer and going into my junior year and realizing like I can do both. Like I can be this aggressive player that my label is, but I can also be a very talented, skillful player. And I don't need to rely on just being able to hit people to the ground. And so I think a lot of it was understanding like I always had that underdog mentality of like everyone's here and I'm here. So how do I rise up? And understanding that that didn't always have to be from aggressiveness, but I liked my underdog mentality because I feel like that once again fought the complacency. Like there was always a next step and a next goal of where I'm going.
So when you're looking at bouncing back from perceived failure, not actual statistical failure, but the failure that you felt at those life stages, the I'm not good enough, but other people believe in me. I just don't really believe in myself and my ability to be in this position. How did you work through that?
Yeah, a lot of it was I didn't. And I think that's what really came to the fact of where I became in college was because in those early stages where I'm like, I'm not good enough, it wasn't like I grew the inner confidence in myself to be like, wow, I am good enough and I am this great soccer player. It became a game of I'm going to prove these people wrong. And so instead of finding the inner confidence of being like, I don't care what these people think, I know I'm good, it was, well, screw you. I'm going to prove you wrong. And so it became, instead of like finding that healthy mindset of once again playing for myself and my joy, it became playing for a vengeance and playing for revenge, which worked for me because it was an external motivating factor of, I'm going to run this extra rep because I'm going to prove you wrong. And I'm going to, do this extra thing because you don't think I can. However, at the same time, like that almost created the unhealthy mindset of I need someone to doubt me for me to go forward. So I think when it came to college, like I had these very supportive coaches and I had a supportive team that wanted me to succeed. And I was like, wait, where's my doubters? Like I need to find the people that don't think I'm good enough. And looking back now, like that's just not obviously the mentality to have a happy, stress free, because when I started feeling that anxiety, it was building. I'm like, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. And like, it was almost like I wanted my body to fight back and be like, yeah, but I'm going to prove all these people that I am, instead of like being like, you know what, I'm a good soccer player, I know. And like growing that inner confidence with good self-talk and how I hold myself and knowing I'm good, and instead of like just relying on the need to prove people wrong.
So, do you think that in the same way that you were nurturing your physical health, you are also neglecting your mental health in a way?
Yes, and like that's my biggest thing now is especially when it came to the point of me thinking in Iowa, like maybe I need to go to a sports psychologist to talk all this out. Or, I have been told my whole life, whether that be from my parents, from my previous coaches, that being mentally strong means showing no emotion. And when you are at your mental toughness, no one can tell like what you're thinking in your head. And so for me, admitting that I needed to see help showed I was weak. And I couldn't do that because I've always been told I'm so mentally strong. So why would I need to go ask for help? I don't need to ask for help. And that became the biggest debate I've ever had in my life, was allowing myself to admit that someone else could make me stronger, because I've been told my whole life, like I need to be the strongest person in the room, and to be like, how, if I can't even control my own emotions, how am I not strong? So a therapist is going to help me because I'm strong enough and I can do this. And so I really think, yeah, like you said, like pushing for physical, I completely neglected any mental side of the game. Because to me, the only mental side of the game was, oh, can you handle pressure? Like, are you good in tough scenarios? And it's not actually the self confidence and anxiety or anything like that. It's just being mentally strong. And so it took me so long to be able to break down that wall and that barrier and be like, maybe seeking help will help my game. And on top of that, then I went to talk to the sports psychologist, and one thing they recommended was like anti-anxiety medication. And that took me another 3 or 4 months to be able to accept, because I was like, no, like, I mean, yeah, sure, I can talk to you and yeah, I've seen success, but anti-anxiety medication is not the answer because I'm strong enough. Like doing this, I feel better. I feel talking better, talking to a therapist. So I don't need that. And it took me so long to understand that like this was something that was at the end of the day going to benefit my game. And it didn't matter whether like I had to get help or if it was from myself, like it was making me a better soccer player.
So, there was an episode of this podcast, probably maybe 20 episodes ago, where I had a guest on, a sports psychologist, and we redefined mental toughness, because he was just saying, I don't like exactly the attributes of mental toughness that you just talked about. He was like, I don't think that it lends itself to increased mental health. How would you redefine mental toughness in a way that is positive?
That's a great question. And for me, I think the definition of mental toughness is being able to go down to your core and be able to accept what you need. Being mentally strong is the ability to be vulnerable with yourself and others. And it's the ability to really look in yourself and reflect on what may benefit you in the future, and being able to seek out and find those things. And for me, like being able to look inward and being able to like look at myself and once again get through that hard exterior was something I never did. It was something that was so scary to me. And so being able to really look inward and grow from that, that's the mental toughness, is being able to accountability in yourself and look inward and help.
So, what was the catalyst in you starting these helpful behaviors, like going to a sports psychologist and working through medication styles?
Yeah, a lot of it for me was, I wouldn't say there was one specific moment, but it was a point where I hit rock bottom. Also, I am going to plug in my laptop real quick because it is
Okay.
about to die, and I do not want to let that happen. All right, there we go. Sorry about that.
You're good.
Yeah, so for me, I wouldn't say there was like a specific moment, but a lot of it came with preseason last year. So I'm a sophomore at this point, and everything with the pandemic had just happened. So we were at home for months on end, training by myself, and that was honestly pretty therapeutic for me because I kind of got to go back to my roots. I was kicking balls in my backyard with my mom again, which is something that like I didn't think I'd ever really had the chance to do. And so as much as like that summer in a weird way like restored my love of the game and my like, joy in soccer, now all of a sudden I'm going back to campus. And for me, I immediately got caught in contact tracing, and then like my roommate testing positive with COVID. So there was a month and a half where I was in my house alone. And so I was training on my own, like at a like local park facility where I could be like away from other people and doing what I needed to do to keep up with soccer. But I remember going into preseason that year, and then there was the whole question of, will we have a season? Won't we have a season? What's going to happen? When are we going to find out? And that preseason, I remember like going to practice and being so overwhelmed with the fact that now I'm a sophomore on the team. So freshman year, I had pressure on me to not be like the failure freshman to ruin it for seniors. And that was a lot. But now I'm going into my sophomore year, where as a sophomore, I'm a leader on the team. I've played one of the most minutes out of everyone on the team. So people are now looking to me, and I still don't know what I'm doing. And now I have this expectation of what am I going to be? Like, I need to lead this team as a sophomore. I need to be the best defender possible. At this point, like I had conversations with my coaches about my life beyond Iowa and hoping to play pro and play the next level. And I'm like, well, if I'm the person that my coaches think is going to go pro, like I have to be good enough. And then every day and every tackle, I have to be the best out there. There's no question. And for me, that broke me because every day I remember that first week of preseason, like whether I'd have a good practice or not, I'd come home and I'd like just waddle up and cry. And I was starting to have panic attacks because like I was replaying every single minute of every practice over and over again in my head, being like, well, I had a bad touch of this one passing pattern out of 1 in 30 reps. I had one bad touch. Like I was replaying every mistake over and over to a point where like preseason, we'd go to practice, we'd go home, shower, and we'd have the rest of the day to do whatever we needed to do. And I did not enjoy it. I did not spend any time with my teammates. Like I didn't, I had just moved into a new house. I didn't spend any time decorating the house. Like I was in my room freaking out about soccer and about my future. And all of a sudden, this one bad pass I had at practice meant I wasn't going to go pro. And that was to the extremes I was thinking in my head. And so once I had gotten to this point where I was like, okay, like this is not helpful. Like this is not, and if I keep on this path, I'm not even gonna make it through the season. Like I'm gonna end up hating soccer. I'm gonna end up hating myself. I'm gonna end up quitting. And that's not something I'm okay with doing because I know how much this game means to me. And so at that point, I remember this was a hard phone call for me because my mom, my whole life had this, like, she was the one that really helped instill mental toughness in me, meaning like I had to be stronger. And I remember calling my mom and I'm like, I just can't do this. Like, this is not benefiting me anymore. And I was like, I think I need to go see someone. And she was like, I think you do too, because she's like, the way you've been talking to me after every practice, like this isn't beneficial. And so eventually then I was able to reach out to Iowa Sports Psychology and work with them for the semester, which just helps so much. And being able to realize like one bad practice doesn't mean I'm not going to go pro, and understanding that these extremes that I was putting myself through were just completely outrageous. And it helped me grow as a person and as a player. Absolutely.
So what in those meetings with the sports psychologist, were there things that you were specifically working on, or was it just kind of like them instilling confidence in you?
Yeah, so a lot of it was at first we started like going back about like why I think I go to the extremes of I went to, and I went into, the pressures I put on myself since childhood, and always, being that like, haha, like I'm gonna prove you wrong mentality. And I like just talking through it and saying those words out loud, because those are words I probably hadn't said to anyone before, like made me realize how unhealthy that behavior was. And so I think a first of it was like for me just to say it out loud, like I was able to reflect on the fact that I'm like, this clearly is not something that's beneficial. And then from there, it just became like little things, like they just gave me tips and tricks on like what I could do. So after like I went to practice, I would do my practice, and whether it was a good practice or not, as soon as I left the Iowa soccer facility, I was done thinking about practice. Like I couldn't, overthink it. Cause like I said, I would just never leave my bed because I'd overthink it so much. And I had like made myself, and like I had a code word in my own brain. So anytime I caught myself like thinking about soccer, I would literally say out loud, like pineapple. Like it was the stupidest thing. But to me, once it's a final, I was like, no, like we're done. Like we're not talking about this. We're moving on. And like luckily I had a lot of support from my roommates and my boyfriend and other people in my life to be like, if I'd start talking about practice, they're like, no, Sam, you're not doing that. Like we said we're not doing this. Which was so helpful just to like clear my mind from soccer. On top of that, like I'm a kind of person, I do love watching film, and I like doing a breakdown and, analyzing that. And as much as film could be beneficial, for me at that time in my life, it wasn't, because I would watch myself make a mistake and I'd hit like rewind and rewind and rewind, and just keep watching myself make that mistake over and over again. And so I'm back to watching film now, and I know like how to do it and how to balance it well and look at, yes, things I did wrong, but also like overlook and look at things I did really well. But at the time, I just would not let myself watch film because I knew it would fester into these thoughts and these ideas. And then I went really stereotypical with it, and I took post-it notes and I hung them all around my room with different sayings of like, it's okay to show emotions and you're strong. And I went through and I listed some of my biggest achievements that I've had through soccer and through life, and I hung them around my room. And every morning I would go and I'd read them. And I'd be like, okay, like these are all the things, like you're a great person and you're a great soccer player, and like things like that, just small things really helped instill the confidence that I have in myself.
So watching film as a trigger is a really interesting perspective. I mean, how did you work through that or around that when you watch film as a team?
Yeah. And so for me, when I watch film as a team, I made a point to look at every outside back except myself. Because I just didn't want to look at the mistakes that I made. And sure, there was definitely some times where the mistake that the coach was pointing out was mine. And so I wasn't able to completely avoid it. But also, this was something that my coaches didn't notice was, so the software that we have to watch film, the coaches can see what players watch film, how many times they've watched it, how much time they spent on film. And my coach one day looked into this, and my numbers were just exorbitantly high. Like I'd rewatch our one game 5 times. And so there was a time he called me into my office and he's like, you're done. Like, you're done watching film. Like, we're not letting you do this anymore. And so like he was like, you're clearly overanalyzing yourself. And like he could kind of tell I was getting to my own head because I'd watch film and I'd be like, so now like the things I did wrong on film, I'd be trying to correct, but then I'd be overthinking in my own head during practice, and I just wouldn't be to the caliber of what I wanted. And so for me on my own time, I was not allowed to watch film. And I have a coach, our defensive coach, especially. So he works specifically with me. He was so great because like our rule was I was not allowed to watch film on my own. And when I watched film, it was with him. And he did a specific job of, yes, cutting up some clips of what I needed to work on. But also he's like, and look at these like 5 clips of the great things you did during the game. And so he did a great job of really like saying like, yeah, like you can watch film to criticize yourself and grow and, look what to fix. He's like, but you also can look at film to like build that confidence of like, dang, like I really did that in a game. Like I executed like that. That's awesome. And his help with me to be able to help navigate that and understand like, yeah, like it's bad, but it's also good. And like, that's now how I look at film is like, so when I watch it, like I break it down and I look and I'm like, dang, like I like have it, like my mom and I Snapchat, and like I'll send her a video. I'm like, look at this pass I made. Like that's so awesome. And like my mom will send me back. She's like, yeah, it was. Like we'll hype each other. Like she'll hype me up from it. But yeah, like I like always record on my phone the great clips and I send it to my whole family. And so like it really takes time for me to be like, yeah, like yesterday even like we played St. Louis University. I'm from St. Louis. That was a huge game for me personally, and I got the game winning assist. I have watched that assist about 80 times, I'm gonna be honest, but I'm like, that was my moment. Like, and I like have learned to like, as much as like in years past I would have caught myself like, yeah, I got the game winning assist against SLU, but like, yeah, we play Iowa State on Thursday and that needs to be my focus. Now, like I said, I'm like, today I am celebrating the SLU game and I'm watching that assist 80 times because I can. And so like, I've definitely learned how to like accept and appreciate my accomplishments and use that through film.
So you're a defensive coach who took time out of the day to cater to what they knew was something that you were clearly working through. How important was that for you in showing in the
It
coaching staff showing you that they really truly cared about you?
it means beyond words. I mean, like I said early, like this is one of the reasons I committed to Iowa is because I feel like so many coaches wouldn't do that. And obviously I don't know that personally, but I had a like the coaches here care. And just that time I spent in the guy's like his name's Drago. The time I spent in Drago's office, like he would like put his arm around me at practice. He's like, he knows I love coffee. We're both big coffee drinkers. And he's like, let's go get a coffee later. And so I'd go to his office and he'd have a coffee for me and we'd watch film. And the time that he took to build that relationship with me, like I tell everyone, like Drago's my second dad. Like when I'm in Iowa, like I love this man and his family more than anything. But the fact that he took time out of his day just to understand what I need. And even now, like we did film him and I a week ago, and he was like, now you need to tell me when we need to stop because like I don't want you overthinking this. And so he understands like the pressures that I had put on myself. And yeah, it meant more than words that he could recognize what I needed and took the time to do that for me. And yeah, it just really solidified why I'm here at Iowa.
So let's talk about your teammates. Is anyone else going through what you're going through?
Yes, I would absolutely say so. But I would say there is still a stigma at Iowa that talking about that's not okay. And that's something that like through different organizations on campus and through my team, like I'm trying to fix. Everyone has their own pressures. And I know whether that be me who has a really big pressure and the anxiety of starting and, being that freshman into that. My roommate is a completely different scenario. She's never played a minute in college and she's a junior now. She's had injury after injury after injury. And so she's facing her own depressive and anxiety thoughts because she's like, well, I'm not like my body physically does not want me to play soccer and I don't understand what's going on. And so I feel like the biggest thing is through the team, everyone has certain things that they're struggling with or that they're going on. And that's going to happen in college athletics. And so I think right now, like one of the most special things we're doing at Iowa is we have like team nights where we go into the locker room and we're just like, all right, like no judgment. No one can take anything out because I know the issue is like for me, my freshman year, I felt way uncomfortable talking to my roommate about my pressures of starting because I'm like, I'm starting and she's not touching the field. Like I shouldn't be complaining. Like I have it made according to her. And so who am I to be like the one that's like, oh my gosh, starting so pressure filled when she's like, well, I'm injured, so I wish I could be starting. And so we're really trying to open that dialogue of understanding like everyone is going through something and everyone has a story. So whether that be because you're stressed out because you're playing 90 minutes a game or you're upset because you've never touched the field. And so understanding as a team that each of those equally suck. And so we've definitely had a job of opening up the dialogue, and I feel like that's really helped. And that's been one of my goals now as a junior, looking out for the freshmen who are playing a lot and understanding what they're going through. And so even I have coffee with, we have one freshman who's been an absolute stud this season. And so I have coffee with her later today because we're going to meet up and be like, hey, like, how's your first day? Because there's our first day of school. I'm like, how's your first day of college going? Like, let's just open that dialogue. So if something were to come up with her, I know I have that relationship to be able to help her, like Drago helped me.
So now you're going into your junior season. What did it mean to win the Big Ten in 2020? I mean, after all of the adversity that you just talked about, have it pay off with a conference championship win.
It meant so much, but to me personally, it meant so much more because for me, I didn't get to play in the Big Ten championship. I had gotten a double yellow card in our semifinal against Penn State. It's devastating, and so that meant I didn't get to touch the field. It was the first Iowa game I didn't start in and didn't play any minutes in. And so I did not know how to act at first. Like I was devastated for myself. Um, I didn't know what that meant. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna like for a second I felt myself being like, I'm gonna lose my starting lineup. The girl they're gonna replace me with, she's gonna play in the NCAA tournament if we win. And then I snapped myself out of that and I was like, dude, you're part of a team. And as much as your life might suck right now, your team is playing for the Big Ten championship for the first time in school history. Like this doesn't get to be about you. And I remember the day, the practice before the tournament, like the girl that was replacing me, she was working on like the set pieces that I normally take. And this is the first time I really like realized how much I've grown as a person. Because normally I'd be like, well, in the back of my head, I'm like, well, I kind of want her to mess up because then I get my spot back when I get to play on the field again. And I went over there and I was like, hey, like try this technique different. Like, and we went through and I worked with her on all the spots that she was going to replace me on. And I remember for me, like just doing that subconsciously, I like took a second. I'm like, am I really doing this? Like, because once again, back to my competitive nature, I was to be better than everyone else. I was to be the best. And so now I'm helping my competition. But it took me a second to realize I'm like, this is my teammate and we're playing for a Big Ten championship. And I remember after we won the Big Ten championship, and it was the girl who replaced me on all the set pieces who scored the game winner. And I was so happy for her. And I remember when she came off the field, like I jumped into her arms and it was this huge moment because I was like, wait, possibly my not selfish behavior was part of the reason why we could have won this game. And after we were all celebrating, I had a teammate, our captain came up to me and was like, I hope you know, like, this is your championship too. Like, though you didn't get to play in the championship game, like, you were part of the reason we went on this run and you helped us out. And like that moment that a teammate in the midst of celebration took time to be like, dude, like this girl, like helped us. Like it changed my mind of the fact like I was a part of this Big Ten championship team. And it was something so grateful. And it kind of like was a pivotal moment in the fact like of how much I've grown as a person beyond just an athlete.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
that's incredible.
The fact like when I tell this story, like I still get chills because I feel like it should be something like out of a movie and not something that actually happened in real life.
So when you were, I mean, sitting on the sideline, watching your teammate go in for you, were you comparing subconsciously your game to hers, or had you weaned yourself off of that comparison mentality at that point?
So I think the midst of I definitely was comparing a bit, but I was mostly comparing in the Big Ten semifinal because when I got sent off the field, there was still 30 minutes left to play in the game. And we were up 1-0 against the number 4 team in the country, and we had won 2 games in the season. Like no one thought we were going to win that game. And so for me, like adjusting to now my team has played a man down. Like I remember when I first came off the field, I was just devastated. Like I sat down on the bench and like I was like, okay, like how do I act now? Like what do I do? Like this is a scenario I've never been in. And like something within me just knew I needed to stand up and start cheering. So as much as I had like tears running down my own face, like I was like, go Hawks and like yelling and like it became a huge team joke now that I was like cheering through my tears. But in those minutes, like the girl who, you know, shifted over to my position, like I was like, oh, she missed that tackle. I wouldn't have missed that tackle. Like, and I made me feel guilt ridden because I was like, I didn't mean to get this scenario. I didn't mean to get the second yellow card. And I'm like, if we lose, like it's my fault because my team played with 10 and like that's my fault. Even though in the end of the day, it wasn't. And looking back, I can say like, you know, whether the call was justified or not, like there was zero intention to do that. And I was like scared of how my team was going to treat me. I was scared my team was going to be mad at me for having to put us in that position. And everyone rallied around me. Every sub that came off the field came straight to me and gave me a hug. Everyone was like, dude, like you're fine, like this is not your fault. And just that support from my teammates that I initially felt when it easily could have been like, if we lose this game, it's Cary's fault. It was, dude, like we need to make sure Cary's okay. And so that love that they showed for me, like kind of got me out of that comparison because I was like, at the end of the day, like I just hope we win this game and we need to cheer and like I need to do everything I can from the sideline. And so when it came to the Big Ten championship at this point, like I just remember that game, I didn't shut up. Like I was screaming and yelling, and we were dancing on the sidelines just because at this point, like we had gone so far and we had done so much. And so I couldn't even be in my jersey that game, but it was like, it was just everyone was going ballistic. And to get that championship win, it just meant so much.
So you have the underlying factor throughout this interview so far has been your tenacity. You must be incredibly familiar with yellow cards. So were those two that precluded you from playing in the championship a familiar occurrence to you? I mean, obviously they came at an unsatisfying time, we'll put it that
Yes.
way, but is that something that your coaches kind of understand about you, that you're going to be in the scrum for a yellow?
Oh, that's an absolute guarantee that I'm going to be a scrub of the yellow. I remember my freshman year. So, like in college soccer, you can get 5 yellow cards before you have to sit out one game. And I'm pretty sure I got 4 my freshman year. My coach is like, dude, you need to get it together. Like, you need to watch out. Like, it is known that I'm going to go into a tackle hard and I'm going to do everything I can to win the ball, whether that be legal or not. I remember I had one yellow card my like earlier in the sophomore season. It wasn't anything brutal or anything bad, but I actually had like a low yellow card season, so I only had the one going into the semifinal. And then yeah, the first one was in the first 12 minutes of the game, slide tackle from behind, probably a fair yellow card, to be honest. Like myself, I actually am also a pretty high level referee, and so it's always interesting for me to look back on my own film and be like, would I call that a yellow? And I have to like put my own bias aside and be like, yeah, I would. And then the second one was definitely a questionable, if you're gonna do it or not. And so yeah, it's known that I'm going to be in the scrum for a foul at all times, to the point where even earlier this season we were joking around and like we were something on a corner kick, and he's like, and if you get a yellow card here, I'm gonna take you out for ice cream because this is where you get the yellow. And he was talking to a different player, and I looked at him, I was like, promise? And he goes, not you. He's like, no, we're not playing this game again.
That's so funny, but I feel like that was something that I was always told as well. Like, if you're not getting a yellow card, you're not working hard enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially like I said, with the type of player, like I definitely am known as like a blue collar gritty player. So I'm like, there's gonna be fouls. We're just gonna accept that at this point.
So, what is the Hawk Award?
The Hawk Award is for the player on the team that you feel best represents the team on the field, in the classroom, in the community, and all other guidelines. So the definition of it should be like the teammate who you feel best resembles and best pictures what you want your ultimate teammate to be.
So, what did it mean to be a recipient of that award?
It meant the world. That award, to be blunt, normally goes to a senior who has had like a very strong career throughout her time at Iowa. And one of the co-recipients was Diane Sinkowski, who absolutely deserved it. But to be able to be seen as my teammates, as someone who represents them in all aspects, not just on the field, meant so much. To be able to see that they saw me as a good teammate and as a leader in the community, and all other things that I do, they want me to be the idealistic teammate. It meant the world that they saw my effort, not just in my play, but in everything else and how I live my life.
So, is that just another reason that you belong at Iowa?
Completely. I haven't really second guessed my college decision once. I've loved every minute through the ups and the downs that it's had. Obviously, not everything's been rainbows and butterflies, but little things like that and the respect I know I have for my teammates, like it's just meant the world to me.
So, what have you changed from the time that you stepped on campus? How have you changed your mentality toward soccer, toward working through anxiety? I mean, how has little freshman Sam changed and become who you are now?
There's been a big change in me, which is something I honestly didn't expect because I genuinely thought when I stepped on campus that I knew it all. I was like, no, they say you think you know it all as a freshman, but I actually do. Um, and so the ability for me to now be a junior and look back on my play and who I am as a person has meant so much because I feel like just over the time that I've had at Iowa, I've grown, and whether that be my ability to make connections with people. I used to be such a standstill person. I do my own thing, I ride my own wave. And now like I genuinely have great relationships with my teammates, and I hang out with them and I love them. And just the fact that I've grown so much in my vulnerability and my willingness to be open with people and share my own story and listen to others and not feel that need for comparison or anything. A lot of it's come with just a lot of growth and confidence in myself and knowing I'm here for a reason, but also understanding that like not everything needs to be a competition. I used to be the kid that would take the game of Uno too seriously. So I'm so happy with the fact that like I know when to turn it on, but I also have learned when to turn it off and when's a good time to be a teammate instead of a competitor. And I feel like I've just grown so much in the regards of like who I am as a human, my maturity, my emotional intelligence, and a lot of my beliefs. I just read a book, Brene Brown, Rising Strong, and a lot of it was so much about like the power of vulnerability. And one line in there that stuck with me so much is everyone is doing the best they can. And when you assume that, even if it's not true, but when you assume that everyone's doing the best you can, your life is so much better. You get rid of a lot of those angry things of like, oh, this person did this to me on purpose. Like she was doing the best she could. And so I've kind of changed the way I think by understanding like mistakes are made, but people are doing the best they can and giving people benefit of the doubts and not jumping to judgment and anger and understanding that. And then another motto I have right now, this is my motto for the fall, which I love. It's from the TV show Ted Lasso, which is so odd, but it's be a goldfish. And so the whole saying in there throughout like the first season is be a goldfish, because goldfish are the happiest animals on earth because they have a 10-second memory. And so for me, like when I'm on the field, I actually draw a goldfish on my wrist because like whether I mess up a play, the first thing that pops in my head is goldfish, move on, let's go, 10-second memory. And so that's been like my motto of just like, you know, when you're on the field, you do what you can do. When you're off the field, still like mistakes are going to happen, but be a goldfish through all of it.
That is a great way to end this interview. Is there anything else? I'm done with the questions that I had to ask you. Is there anything else that you think that I missed about your story?
Honestly, no, like you did such like I mean, I've done a decent amount of these podcasts now, and I just want to compliment you on your ability to come up with questions. And like I like honestly this felt like I was in a therapy session. So no, like this is so awesome. Like thank you so much for inviting me on, and I'm so excited for this.
Yay! I'm so excited to do your episode. I think it will come out in 3 weeks, and I'll post on Instagram and Twitter. If you could just send me a picture of you, it could be a picture of a headshot of your bio picture, or it could be something of you in action, just so I can use it for social media when the podcast episode does come out. And you can just
Absolutely.
either, I mean, if you have it on you right now, you can drop it in the chat, or you can just direct message me on Instagram.
Yeah.
And just one more time, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about or plug or correct about your story? Or if there's anything that we talked about that you don't feel comfortable with being in this interview, tell me now, it will be edited out.
No, everything was so great. Thank you so much again. I'm so excited about this.
Yay. Well, I'm so happy to have you, and I'll get back in touch once this episode comes out.
Yeah, that sounds great. Good luck with everything you're doing. I'm so excited that I follow you now and I can't wait.
Yay. Good luck with your season.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you
Bye.
again.
Have a good day.